A rising star, a controversial fighter, and the voice of a generation, Charlie Kirk began with nothing but a dream to mobilize young conservatives, setting up debate tables and speaking on college campuses, and turned that grassroots effort into one of the most powerful youth movements in America. He was loved, hated, celebrated, and criticized, but he was never ignored. And just when his influence was reaching new heights, tragedy struck. In front of a packed crowd at Utah Valley University, a single shot rang out, and the man who spent his life commanding the stage collapsed on it. Tonight, we're not just telling the story of Charlie Kirk's life, we're taking you deep into the movement he built, the enemies he made, and the moments that defined him. From his small-town beginnings to the corridors of power, from viral campus clashes to the shocking assassination that stopped America in its tracks. This is the full, untold story. Was he a hero fighting for freedom or a provocateur who went too far? And who was the man who ended his life and why? Stay with us. By the end of this documentary, you'll see the story of Charlie Kirk like you've never seen it before. Before we dive into this powerful story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, so you never miss the deep dives, true crime stories, and hard-hitting documentaries we bring you every week. Your support helps us uncover the truth and share stories that matter. Let's get into it. Charles James Kirk was born on October 14, 1993, in the suburban community of Arlington Heights, Illinois, where he was raised in a middle-class household by his father, Robert Kirk, a dedicated architect, and his mother, Kimberly Kirk, a compassionate mental health counselor, both of whom leaned conservative in their political views and instilled in their son a strong sense of discipline, responsibility, and patriotism that would later fuel his lifelong passion for politics. From an early age, Kirk showed signs of curiosity about civic life and leadership, eventually becoming an Eagle Scout, a milestone that not only taught him perseverance, problem-solving, and public service but also gave him a taste of what it meant to inspire and lead others. His first exposure to real-world politics came in 2010, when as a teenager he volunteered for the U.S. Senate campaign of Illinois Republican Mark Kirk, no relation. An experience that opened his eyes to the mechanics of political campaigning, grassroots organizing, and the challenges of communicating conservative ideas in a state that leaned heavily blue. During his teenage years, Kirk developed a voracious appetite for reading conservative writers, economists, and political commentators, sharpening his understanding of free markets and limited government. And by the age of 17 he took a bold step into the public arena by penning an op-ed for Breitbart News in which he criticized the perceived liberal bias in his school's economics textbooks. That article went viral within conservative media circles, catching the attention of prominent commentators and even landing Kirk his first television appearance on Fox News, where viewers were struck by his articulate defense of conservative principles at such a young age, a moment that became the launchpad for the national platform he would soon build. In 2012, at just 18 years old and fresh out of high school, Charlie Kirk made the bold decision to co-found Turning Point USA alongside the late Bill Montgomery, a Tea Party activist who recognized Kirk's unusual charisma and talent for communication. And together they set out to create an organization that would mobilize young conservatives on college campuses across the nation and fill what they saw as a glaring void in youth activism on the right. Kirk's vision was simple yet ambitious: to educate students about free market economics, limited government, and individual liberty, and to push back against what he viewed as the overwhelmingly progressive ideologies dominating universities, a vision that resonated with donors and students who were hungry for an alternative voice. The early days were anything but glamorous. Kirk and Montgomery started with no money, no real political connections, and no national platform, but they worked tirelessly, traveling from campus to campus, knocking on doors, speaking to small student groups, and recruiting the first chapters of Turning Point USA, often living out of suitcases and relying on small donations just to keep the organization alive. These formative years forced Kirk to become not just an activist but a strategist and a fundraiser, sharpening his ability to craft persuasive messages that attracted the attention of larger conservative media outlets and, eventually, influential donors who would help turn the fledgling organization into a national movement. Kirk's first taste of national visibility came as he began speaking at conservative conferences, GOP events, and grassroots gatherings, where he built relationships with high-profile Republican figures, wealthy benefactors, and think tank leaders who admired his energy and ability to connect with young audiences. His decision to drop out of Harper College to pursue activism full-time was both risky and controversial, but it allowed him to dedicate all his focus to building Turning Point USA into what would eventually become one of the most recognized and well-funded youth organizations in the conservative movement, giving him the platform to influence political discourse at a level most 20-year-olds could only dream of. As Turning Point USA began to gain momentum, Charlie Kirk and his team developed a highly visible campus strategy that would become their trademark, setting up information tables in the heart of college quads, staging Prove Me Wrong booths, and creating open debate corners that challenge students to engage on hot-button issues like capitalism, free speech, and the size of government. These tactics were designed not only to spark conversation but to generate viral moments that could be shared online, amplifying the organization's presence beyond the campus and into the broader national conversation. With each chapter that formed, Turning Point USA built a network of young conservatives who were equipped with talking points, educational resources, and a sense of community that made them feel part of a larger movement fighting back against what Kirk described as left-wing indoctrination. Recognizing the power of scale, Kirk took the organization national with large events such as America Fest and the Student Action Summit, conferences that brought together thousands of students and some of the biggest names in conservative politics, from members of Congress to media personalities and even President Donald Trump, transforming these gatherings into a rite of passage for conservative college activists. These events not only raised the profile of Turning Point USA but also solidified Kirk's position as a key bridge between the Republican Party establishment and its younger, more activist base. As the organization grew, so did its offshoots. Kirk launched Turning Point Action, a more explicitly political arm designed to mobilize voters, train young campaign workers, and directly support conservative candidates in elections, while other affiliates focused on faith outreach, high school engagement, and even online influencers. Meanwhile, Kirk's personal media presence exploded. He launched The Charlie Kirk Show, which quickly grew into one of the most downloaded conservative podcasts in the country, and he became a regular presence on Fox News and other cable outlets where his commentary reached millions of viewers each week. To further spread his message, Kirk turned to book publishing, authoring several key titles including Campus Battlefield, which served as a manual for conservative students navigating liberal campuses, The MAGA Doctrine, a defense of Donald Trump's populist agenda, The College Scam, a scathing critique of higher education, and Right-Wing Revolution, a call to action for the next generation of conservatives. Each book functioned as both a manifesto and a recruiting tool, giving readers a deeper look into Kirk's philosophy while funneling more supporters into the Turning Point USA network. By combining in-person activism, large-scale events, media dominance, and published works, Kirk built a multi-platform empire that cemented his role as one of the most influential conservative organizers of his generation. As Charlie Kirk's profile and Turning Point USA's influence continued to grow, one of the most pivotal moments in his career came with the rise of Donald Trump and the birth of the MAGA movement, which provided the perfect stage for Kirk to fully step into national politics. Unlike many young conservative commentators who were initially skeptical of Trump, Kirk embraced the former president early on, defending his populist policies on television and social media and framing Trump as the embodiment of the fight against the radical left and entrenched political elites. This alignment turned Turning Point USA into one of the most vocal and visible youth organizations within the MAGA ecosystem, effectively making Kirk a bridge between Gen Z and millennial voters and the Trump movement. By the 2022 midterms and leading into the 2024 election cycle, Kirk had transitioned from commentator to active political player, using Turning Point Action to endorse and campaign for candidates who aligned with the populist, America First agenda. High-profile endorsements, such as his support for J.D. Vance in Ohio's Senate race, showcased his ability to influence key races by mobilizing young conservative voters through rallies, campus campaigns, and targeted outreach. His focus on driving youth turnout and training a new generation of activists positioned Turning Point USA as not just a cultural force but also a political machine capable of affecting real electoral outcomes. Alongside his political evolution came a noticeable shift in his personal and organizational messaging, what many have described as a turn toward Christian nationalism. Kirk, who had once been perceived as primarily a secular advocate of free market economics, began speaking more openly about faith, morality, and America's Christian heritage. This shift culminated in the launch of Turning Point Faith, a project aimed at mobilizing pastors, church leaders, and Christian congregations to become politically active. Kirk began advocating for policies inspired by biblical principles, openly promoting creationism and arguing that Christian values should play a central role in public life. His messaging grew more explicitly evangelical, transforming Turning Point USA's rallies into faith-infused gatherings where prayer and worship music often accompanied political speeches, further blurring the line between cultural movement, religious revival, and political campaign. Through these alliances and ideological shifts, Kirk not only solidified his place within the Republican Party's populist wing but also positioned himself as a leading voice in a broader cultural struggle. One that seeks to redefine the future of conservatism by fusing political activism with a revivalist religious energy aimed squarely at shaping America's next generation. As Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA's influence grew, so too did the controversies surrounding them. One of the most polarizing initiatives was the creation of the Professor Watchlist, an online database that publicly names professors accused of discriminating against conservative students or promoting left-wing ideology in the classroom. While Kirk and Turning Point USA framed the list as a tool for transparency and accountability, critics claimed it fostered harassment, intimidation, and threats against faculty, with some professors reporting hate mail, security concerns, and disruptions to their classes after being listed. This sparked a national debate about whether the project was defending free speech or chilling academic freedom. Financial transparency has also been a recurring flashpoint. Detractors have raised questions about Turning Point USA's funding sources, large donations from major conservative benefactors, and the organization's spending patterns. Allegations have included potential conflicts of interest between its activism and direct involvement in political campaigns, as well as criticism over Kirk's rising compensation and the lavish scale of some Turning Point USA events, charges that Kirk has dismissed as politically motivated attacks designed to discredit the movement. Another frequent point of contention is Kirk's public messaging. Critics and fact-checkers have accused him of spreading misinformation or making exaggerated claims about issues like election integrity, the COVID-19 pandemic, and campus politics. Supporters counter that his rhetoric is intentionally provocative to spark conversation and mobilize young conservatives, arguing that his detractors focus on minor misstatements to silence him. Inside Turning Point USA, there have also been moments of tension and dissent. Some former staff and student chapter leaders have left the organization, citing disagreements with its direction or discomfort with certain rhetoric. Public resignations and controversies involving affiliated personalities have occasionally forced Turning Point USA to issue statements and distance itself from individuals whose remarks threaten the group's broader image. Despite these criticisms, Kirk has used them to galvanize his audience, often portraying the backlash as proof that he and his movement are challenging powerful institutions and winning ground in the culture war. By the early 2020s, Charlie Kirk was no longer just a campus activist. He was a nationally recognized political figure, and Turning Point USA had grown into a powerhouse with the resources to stage large-scale events across the country. One of the most highly publicized efforts during this period was the announcement of the American Comeback Tour, a nationwide speaking series designed to energize conservative students and prepare them for the next wave of political battles. The tour was marketed as a call to action, with Kirk promising to deliver bold, unfiltered commentary on free speech, woke politics, and America's future. The first stop was set at Utah Valley University (UVU), a venue strategically chosen to draw a large crowd of students from across the state. When the day of the event arrived, anticipation was high. Crowds of young conservatives, local community members, and curious onlookers filled the venue, some lining up hours in advance just to get a seat near the front. The room was packed with Turning Point USA banners, merchandise tables, and volunteers greeting attendees, creating the feel of both a political rally and a cultural festival. Security arrangements were visible but not oppressive. University police maintained a presence at entrances, screening bags and managing crowd flow, while private security kept a close eye on the stage and the first few rows of seating. The layout was designed to maximize energy with a wide-open stage, bright lighting, and a large Turning Point USA backdrop that gave the event a professional, high-energy atmosphere. When Kirk finally took the stage, the crowd erupted into cheers. Dressed in his signature blazer and speaking with a mix of humor and fiery conviction, he launched into a speech that combined political commentary, cultural criticism, and motivational language aimed at empowering young conservatives to take action on their campuses. After his prepared remarks, Kirk opened the floor for his famous, "Prove Me Wrong" question and answer session, a signature feature of Turning Point USA events that invites even his critics to step up to the microphone and challenge his ideas publicly. This format created some of the most memorable moments of the night, as audience members debated everything from capitalism to gun rights, often drawing applause, laughter, or spirited exchanges that went viral on social media afterward. By the end of the event, the atmosphere was electric, with attendees swarming merchandise tables, signing up for campus chapters, and taking selfies with Kirk and other Turning Point USA representatives. The UVU stop set the tone for the entire American Comeback Tour, a blend of high-energy activism, ideological training, and media spectacle designed to amplify the organization's message nationwide. The Utah sun beat down on the outdoor crowd gathered at Utah Valley University for the kickoff of Charlie Kirk's American Comeback Tour. Folding chairs stretched across the quad, cameras were rolling, and the energy was electric as Kirk engaged the audience during his signature, "Prove Me Wrong" question and answer session. Then at exactly 12:23 p.m. MDT, the event was shattered by the sharp crack of a rifle. Kirk staggered mid-sentence, clutching at his neck in shock before collapsing to the ground. For a split second, the crowd was frozen, unsure of what had just happened, and then chaos erupted. People screamed, dove for cover behind chairs and tables, and scrambled toward the edges of the quad. Security personnel rushed to the stage, throwing themselves over Kirk's body as others scanned the surrounding rooftops. Investigators would later confirm the shot came from roughly 142 yards away, allegedly fired from a rooftop using a .30-06 Mauser bolt-action rifle. The shooter had a clear vantage point of the open-air stage, making the strike both deliberate and devastating. Emergency responders were on the scene within minutes. Campus police secured the perimeter while medics worked frantically to stop the bleeding. Kirk was still alive when he was loaded into an ambulance and rushed to the nearest trauma center under tight police escort. Despite their efforts, doctors pronounced him dead at 1:07 p.m. The moment the news broke, social media lit up with disbelief and outrage, and the political world braced for what would quickly become one of the most polarizing and consequential events of the year. The hours following the shooting saw Utah Valley University placed under an immediate lockdown as police swarmed the area. Witnesses were interviewed, security footage was pulled from campus cameras, and a massive dragnet extended into nearby neighborhoods. 2 individuals were briefly detained for questioning, but by nightfall, both were cleared of involvement and released. The suspect was still at large and tension across the state only deepened. The breakthrough came the next morning when 22-year-old Tyler James Robinson walked into the Utah County Sheriff's Office and quietly surrendered. Family members, recognizing him from early police descriptions, had urged him to turn himself in. Robinson was taken into custody without incident, and investigators immediately began piecing together his movements before and after the attack. Prosecutors quickly leveled a series of charges against him: aggravated murder, discharge of a firearm, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and committing a violent offense in the presence of a child. In a chilling reported statement to detectives, Robinson allegedly said he had had enough of Kirk's hatred, and that some hate can't be negotiated out. Despite the arrest, several key questions remain unanswered. How did Robinson escape the scene so quickly? Were there others helping him? Why were there surveillance gaps that allowed him to get away? Investigators are still working to reconstruct the forensic timeline and trace every step of his route before surrender. Meanwhile, prosecutors have announced their intent to seek the death penalty, setting the stage for what could become one of the most closely watched trials in Utah history. The media frenzy has only intensified, sparking fierce constitutional debates over political speech, security at public events, and the rising threat of politically motivated violence in America. On September 21, 2025, the grief of a nation found its outlet in an unprecedented memorial service held at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. The venue, capable of holding over 63,000 people, was filled to capacity, with an additional 30,000 plus mourners spilling into an adjacent arena where the service was live-streamed. Thousands more watched from outside on massive LED screens, creating a sea of candles, flags, and handwritten tributes. The atmosphere was part solemn vigil, part national reckoning, as supporters traveled from across the country to pay their respects. The most emotional moment came when Erica Kirk, Charlie's wife, stepped onto the stage. Her voice trembled as she delivered a message that stunned even seasoned political observers. She publicly forgave the alleged shooter, saying her Christian faith compelled her to choose grace over vengeance. Her words, "I refuse to let hate win," drew tears from many in the crowd and quickly went viral across social media. President Donald Trump and other prominent conservative leaders took the stage, using the moment both to honor Charlie Kirk's life and to condemn the toxic political climate they argued had fueled the shooting. Their remarks were fiery, calling for unity among conservatives but also demanding accountability for what they described as mainstream normalization of hate speech directed at right-wing figures. The memorial became more than a tribute; it was a cultural flashpoint, solidifying Charlie Kirk's place as a martyr-like figure for many in the conservative movement and sparking renewed debate about free speech, security at public events, and the cost of political polarization in America. Charlie Kirk's life was meteoric. He built a movement, courted controversy, and died in the very arena he sought to dominate. His death catalyzed debate over speech, security, and the price of influence. If this story moved you, challenged you, or made you think, do us a favor? Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on the bell so you never miss another deep dive documentary like this. Share this video with friends, drop your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you think about Charlie Kirk's life, his legacy, and what it means for America's future. Let's keep this conversation going.